Running Sentences presents Pirates, Politics, and Potentially Treasure. Book 1, Part 9. Lessons of Mayhem. As groups begin to gather for the great hunt of treasure, it is discovered that it is likely within the Groggian Empire. This story is written and narrated by Michael Honnery. It is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, real situations, events, characters, businesses, real and/or fictional, is purely coincidental. Copyright 2023, Michael Honnery. All rights reserved. The foursome of Mott, Francis, Lyon, and Cordite moved through the remainder of the crowd that had gathered for the execution. This area was beginning to filter out of any aliens who come to see what they had wanted to, the execution, of course, and now that the whole event was over, it was back to their busy lives. The door that Zol and Evok had been taken to after they were killed and brought down from the gallows position was behind everything. It was also guarded by two big aliens who mostly covered it up as the group got down there and approached them. "Who goes there?" "I am Cordite Mercury and I work as an ambassador for pirates. We wish to see the body of Zol." "No can do. Only permitted aliens are permitted entrance into the medical room." "Is there someone higher up that I can talk to about this?" It was at that fortunate moment that President Utility happened to be strolling that way. He did appear to be headed right for the medical room and wasn't looking much at the group gathered in front of the door, as he was staring right at the door itself. It was his guards who were following him that suddenly darted out in front to stop Cordite and company from getting any closer to him, and that made the President realize that something was going on. "Oh, Cordite, you do show up in a lot of odd places, don't you?" "I had to be here since you were killing a pirate." The President paused, stopped, and then nodded his head upon thinking about something. "Oh, I guess that would make sense, and I think you want to make sure that he's dead, this Zol character, right? Do you care about him that much? Is it important of a thing for you to do?" "We do care, but only in the fact that we are running our own investigation into what he was actually doing, sir." "And Mr. Francis, confirming his death helps that out?" "Not quite, Mr. President. He likely has chips implanted in him that need to be removed. Pirate stuff that you already have access to, no doubt." "What exact pirate stuff, miss?" "I am Doc Mott, and it is mostly key codes that allow him access to cheap ports where pirates have deals. You don't have need for that kind of stuff, since you already have muscle and ships." "You'd think so, but that is not always the case. You pirates have ways around things, and a navy will only get you so far in uncovering hidden ports, Miss Doc Mott. But I have no objections to you seeing the bodies. They are quite dead, but come in and see for yourself." With a wave of his hand, Utility got the guards at the door to step to the side so that they could all go in. The medical bay was empty aside from the two medical tub beds, which had two bodies on them. The only thing that really stood out was that President Evok seemed a bit big for his bed, but they made their way over towards them, really ignoring that one. Both were covered in a sheet up to their heads, and only allowing their faces to show. From the looks of things, they'd been freshly stripped of any clothes so that they could be examined. Mott went towards Zol, while the rest hung back a bit. "Why do you, Mr. President, need to come here?" "A good question. Confirmation is one reason, and the other is, well, I'm currently bored and looking for things to do since the government runs itself. That is, unless something stupid happens, then they need me. But otherwise, they just go on and on, all on their own, you Cordite." "Do you mind if we ask a few questions, then?" Locking down what happened to Zul, no doubt. You already know most of the story since his arrest. Francis snuck into our controlled space, then, when confronted on it, fired at our ships. A criminal through and through. No doubt he is a criminal, but it also threw out the tempting offer for information, probably on treasure, and now you've gone and killed him. What are you saying, Mr. Cordite? Cordite grimaced and tried to think of a way to put this that wouldn't sound too... He didn't want to sound accusational, but at the same time, he really didn't want to avoid being accusational, because it was what he was about to do. If you bring either of those aliens back to life, do so carefully and keep them out of sight. They will have large bounties on their heads if they're found out. I don't know their connection one another as well as you do, apparently, but I'm willing to say that it probably did exist, and that there's something going on in the background of all of this. A curl of a grin formed on the face of Utility. Think that, Mr. Cordite, and you would be wrong. My intelligence agencies know more than a simple scavenger pirate would. This Cordite knew was far too true and didn't say anything more on the matter, instead turning his attention to Mott, who had gone over to Zul and made quick work of what she needed to do. She was already headed back to them with a few computer chips in her hand, which she showed off to the president. He is dead and will remain so if one doesn't do something stupid. And the chips you retrieved, miss? She showed the pieces of silicon that were in her hand. The simple green boards provided no great insight into what they actually were. A bunch of ship keycards, to which doors and ports they open. You will never know until you are at them, and, are you that interested in trying them out to see where they will lead you? The president gave them a good long hard stare, then shrugged. I'll take half. To this, Mott glanced over at Cordite, who simply nodded that she should do it. Okay, here you go. Thank you. If there is anything else you need, or will you go away now, please? We will leave, but remember, if we see either of those two people living and walking around, you're going to have a lot of questions, and probably armies of your own galactic confederation gunning for your head. The curled smile on Utility's face fell to almost a flat line as he showed them to the door. They all went out without much of a fuss, and were outside in a second. Having returned from the execution, Cricket got out of his embassy car in the parking lot to his embassy. He glanced at the building that wasn't much to look at. The sound of another vehicle entering the parking lot, though, drew his attention, since no vehicles ever came here. He watched it pull into a spot, and then a group of pirates exit and spot him. There was a moment of hesitation before Cordite moved over towards him. Mr. Cordite, do you have information you said you would have? Holding up the folder, Cordite waved it about as he approached. It is here, and I doubt the two that are the target of this bounty will like it one bit. Appraise me on it, then, sir. Cordite thought about that for a moment, then shrugged. A vice president set a bounty from an empire that starts with G. It didn't take much for things to link together in Cricket's mind. He knew that both the royals and the political parties loved to mess around with things if it advanced their own goals. This was probably no different a situation, but he found himself wishing that someone had filled him in, or at least dropped a hint that that was a potential. With that, he looked away again towards the embassy, since the duo were hidden away inside, a bit afraid to come out, but they would explore out if they felt it was worth it. Well, Nero was. It seems Tulis did have little fear of things happening to her, and would wander out on occasion. Not good, but it will clear things up for them, so let's go tell them. The duo of Nero and Tulis were gathered in Cricket's office, where he already was with Cordite's little group. The group sat in chairs as the two approached, looking rather apprehensive. You got what you said you could, right? It took a little bit, but a few requests from pirates, and I have the facts before me. Can you grant me my request? She looked to Cricket, who sat back in his chair. With how things have gone lately, I don't know. It's a bit complicated with the government. You mean the execution of your president? Cricket nodded towards Francis, who'd said this, and then to Cordite, who sat up, began pointing out his party. This, by the way, is Francis, my associate and all-around confidant. Over there, Lion, my second-in-command, and the one who pulled you off the escape pod, and this lady is Doc Mott, who you both briefly know for being the one who checked you over, and had a chance to look over at Mr. Evok after his death, though it was brief, as well as Captain Zoll. You got to see the dead president. Yes, because Mr. Utility was around, we were able to make sure that the pirate Zoll was dead. I could only offer a brief look over your president, though. And they were dead? Yes, Mr. Nero, I believe that is your name. He was dead. That doesn't mean he couldn't be brought back to life, and I'm sure the galactic government has all sorts of ways of doing things, though it would be a bit silly to do that. We can give you some maps, but not all of them. Yes. There's a lot of space around the planets that the Grogian government controls, plus the outposts and asteroid fields and the mining planets. It gets a bit messy trying to sort out what is what, and what isn't mapped out, but there's some stuff we can give you. What exactly can you give us, then? It maps out the major area and some minor planetary space. It's more than most outsiders see, but it's the best we can do at the moment. We would have liked more, since we know exactly where the alien who assigns the bounty is. This drew a raised eyebrow from Ambassador Cricket, who merely looked at the two royals. I have to stay out of this, you two, but make the deal you think is best. I would advise you to drive a hard bargain, though. And why would we care about where they are? They are fairly close by now, and might be in possession of even more power than they had a few days ago, and they might be rushing back towards a planet to help out. Nero stepped forward, arms crossed, as he came over towards Cordite, and was now standing in front of him. His sister was following but a few steps behind him, trying to reach out to make sure he didn't do anything. Threats to our lives, and you hold it hostage for more information? What kind of a creature are you? A pirate, apparently. And a diplomat, apparently. Of some sort, anyway. Listen, I have no problem telling you that your own vice president put a bounty on you. I can only guess that the politics of your empire are complicated, and I don't want to get involved in that. I was merely after more information per pirate request, and this information is to help out. This was to get what we wanted, and it's to get what you wanted. Whether or not you take up this offer... Not backing off, Nero almost imperceptibly began to lean towards Cordite. Why should we believe that? Because it's probably the truth, brother? Cordite offered the folder to them. You can choose to believe it or not, but I need the promised information in return. To this, Tullus held out a small disc, which Cordite took up. Like my brother said, it doesn't contain an entire mapped-out system. It will yet get one to the smaller areas unnoticed if they know how the spaceways work through there, and we do have most of our trading routes on that map. What is this for, by the way? If I had to harbor a guess, Tullus, it is something to do with treasure or a hidden planet filled with gems, gold, and other stuff. It is something like that, which I haven't fully been informed on because the pirate who asked for this information won't tell me completely. And I'm also guessing, since the rumors around here are going on and on about treasure, that way is where many space explorers are setting out for to see if they can find it these days. We will verify this information. Then once that is done, the maps will be accessible. Is that okay? Well, you can verify it right here. The sheets I gave you have the passcode to the bounty website. Enter it in to find your bounties. Can we modify the bounty? With a shake of his head no, Cordite pointed towards the computer on Cricket's desk. The ambassador was quick to swing it around so that it could be accessed by the two, and they set to work, and it only took a few minutes before they were staring at the screen. The Vice President. Why would he? Politics, power, pleasure. Choose your vice or solution and it probably fits. Also, probably now the president of your government as of this morning, though I suspect you were at the execution, so you should know that. We weren't. A choice we made to keep our heads down and out of sight, since we do have a bounty on it. Being at an execution just did not seem smart. Well, is that good enough for you? Do I need a passcode to make sure that these maps work? Right, of course. She shooed her brother away from the computer, and with a few deft strokes of the keyboard, had something else up. There were a few more clicks, and she turned to the group of pirates who were all now beginning to rise up to get ready to leave. It will work for 48 hours. More than that would draw suspicion. So you'll have to download whatever you need in that time, and then transfer it with whatever means you have. Thank you two for your help. We didn't do it to help you. My brother means thank you as well, Mr. Francis, and Cordite, and Doc Mott, and Lion. Anything dangerous pops up and needs a bit of help, we will always be around. We are good for more than pillaging and looting things as pirates. We are good protection, so if you need us, come find us. But we are very good at those things too, if you need it. With a wave of their hands, they departed. Ophelia stared at the data of the maps that had been sent to her by Cordite and set out some of the area of the Grogian Empire before her. The bridge of the ship was a busy hive of activity, preparing for whatever was to come their way. Biting her lip, she frowned as there were quite a few markers for patrol areas for the Grogian naval ships that were marked on it, as well as trade routes. It left little areas to sneak past. Captain! What is it, Darns? We're just about at the border of the space into the Empire. Do you wish to proceed forward or to go invisible? Well, if the stories are true about invisibility not being as great as it once was for sneaking about, that screws us. I guess we have to try anyway. Full speed, hard burn, and get us inside the line to a quiet spot according to these maps. I pray that Cordite, for once, has done well. There was a heavy bump after a moment as the engines kicked on to full power, sending them hurtling across space, but not jumping across it. Everyone grabbed a hold of something, and things became a bit of a blur, and then the sight of ships flying by at their own pace. It would be 2 days of hard travel before they could settle down again, and not have to see this blurry mess of a screen before them, that unlike where you jumped, would be gone after a few seconds. The king and queen of the Grogian Empire sat on their thrones, looking rather bored. The news of the president's execution, while interesting to them, didn't matter since they ruled here. The president and the vice president were merely figureheads to keep the population happy. And, well, they generally did it, and they generally had been trying to grab for power lately. The jester whose job it was to announce things stood in the center of the room, surrounded by other politicians who also wanted the latest news, but didn't want to be the ones who told the news. Thank you, Jester Tom. How do you have anything else to say or add to this? My queen, the vice president will be taking over until the elections will be held. We should hold the elections soon, darling. Yes, the fool Vice President Vivek will only ruin relationships we've built over the past few years. We need to hold it soon. When can we hold these elections, Jester? It would take several months to set things up. not good enough for our purposes. The end of the week should do fine for what we need. Excuse me, I meant for what the people need. They did not elect Vic as he was assigned to Evok. Let the people choose. There was a bit of panic shooting through the gathered politicians, who didn't know what to make of this. It went against all protocols to do things this way, and now the royals were trying to interfere with politicians in their work. Is that all? Shall I go announce this at once? No, we need to take time to make sure that this is the right course of action. A politician by the name of Tripp took a step forward and then found themselves under the harsh glare of the royals and, well, everyone else backing away from them. The stubby figure almost tried to melt back into the crowd, but with the rest of the politicians, they weren't going to allow that to happen. What is the meaning of this? You wish things to remain the same, politician Tripp? You want the people to not have a say in how things are ruled here? No, that is not what I'm saying. The election wasn't that long ago. Our last election wasn't that long ago. And people are tired of politics and politicians. They don't want to go through that whole thing again. The king and queen looked to one another with a shrug. This, too, was insignificant to what they wanted or cared about. Problems like these were for the little people, for the groups under them to decide. Slowly, their gaze shifted back to Tripp, who once again tried to disappear, only to be stopped by his fellow politicians. Fine, we will deal with this in a proper manner. Announce that there is potential for an election should the people voice their support for it. There. Happy now? It will happen sooner rather than later. The court jester looked about to see if there was any further complaints before hurrying off out the door, just so that they didn't befall any anger. With heavy coughs and lots of sputtering, the likes of Zol and Evok both sat upright, trying to get a feeling of something stuck at the back of their throats to go away. More coughing followed as Utility stared at them from across the room. He sat watching as the two slowly came about, looking at him and all around. Welcome back to life. Your lives, by the way, now belong to me. I know you were already aware of that fact, but it never hurts to put it out there just to make sure that we're all together on all of this. What are you after? A jump start on the hidden treasure planet that everyone seems to be after. You two have said you know some stuff, so you better start talking, or... The president let his words trail away, knowing that they were going to get this message. Neither of them was fully paying attention now as they moved their limbs about, trying to wake up and get feeling back into them. It would be Zol who got down onto his feet first from the slab, that seemed to realize that something was expected of him, an answer. He would nod to Evok next to him, who was rubbing his body, trying to recover some of the cold feeling that should make up his body. I will help for my freedom. A grand idea of a thing, Zol, except I was warned off about giving you such things. Powerful people wouldn't like it if either of you are alive, and, well, it would undermine the government for you to be seen alive in your forms. Then what can you even give us? Well, former President Evok, this is a medical room, and the surgery is always a possibility to rearrange things into nicer-looking things. New identities and all of that. But it is all reliant on you providing information, of course. We could say no. The president slowly rose from his spot with a nod of his head towards Zol. Yes, returning to the state of death, that is always an option. It is but a press of a button away, by the way. He held up a remote in his hand that had exactly one button on it. Is that for both of us together, or just one of us? Both. You help each other to help me, otherwise pop goes your head. So no contacting anyone, no pirates, no old connections. You do so and you would threaten the entirety of known space. They don't like people coming back from the dead. No one wants old connections coming back to haunt them. They much prefer it when they remain dead. So what good are we to you, exactly? Lead me and my troops to this treasure wherever it may be, and you will be free. Different names and faces, but free slightly. We would never be free. No, of course not, Eva. Once we have you, we have control of you for the rest of your lives. But you can live peacefully and quietly away from the rest of civilization when all of this is said and done. Now, if you would be so kind as to give me this location for the treasure. I don't know its exact place. All I ever heard was rumors. Then let us start there, shall we, pirate? There were several rich planets with deposits of goods that the Grogian Empire knows but doesn't understand. It was never our goal to figure it all out, though. And from what I know, there is a planet that was found where an agreement of old pirates and a navy captain or an admiral from the Grogian people agreed to hide some stuff on that planet. Is it rich in resources and all of that? There was a bit of a shrug from Zol, who moved about, trying to get his body to work again. He'd been the last one to talk, and Evok, who had mentioned the Grogian Empire, knowing where things were, he was still trying to get a feel for his body and for its new problems. We will do what we can, but since I'm not the president anymore, I can't exactly get you anywhere. Oh, I don't need the president to get me anywhere in the Grogian Empire. The galactic government can get where it wants, when it wants, for the most part. No, it's when the government is trying to split away from the galactic one. Oh, small details. Come, let us set off and find this place already. Do you agree to my offer? Both took a few seconds, before nodding at first to one another, and then to Utility. And as if by magic, a few doctors came charging in the room at this signal. Captain Drought stood near the nearest table of his crew, were gathered round, stuffed into a room, as much they could be in this cafeteria. The odd assortment of them, all of them, were looking towards him. Listen to me as I have an announcement. The president of our great empire, Evok, has been killed by the galactic people. We cannot let this stand, and we cannot stand alongside that group anymore. They claim he was working with pirates. We have never worked with pirates in our lives. A soft cheer went through the crowd, with a few raised fists in agreement. Worse, there are pirates and others headed towards our home space. They think there is some sort of treasure here. Nonsense that was made up by these others to overrun us so that they can actually take over. We will not let the galactic government take over. We will defend our empire from this group. Are you ready to do so? This time it was just the fists of every creature going into the air as a signal of their approval. Drought eyed the crowd to make sure that every fist was up. If a single one looked like it was down, it could very well doom the ship. That was something he did not want to even contemplate. You're all with me, then? There were nods of yes, but it was still hard to trust this on looks alone. He would have to double up and triple up on talking to a few of them one by one. For now, this would have to do, and he clambered off the table as he was met by his new XO with a salute. A fine speech, sir. Yes, good. Is there something you need? Have you finished learning all about the other crew, what the other crew members do yet? Not quite, sir. They asked that I pay a little more attention to what's going on the bridge. Of course they did. Are you still stuck in your ways of listening only to the book? I can see things both ways now, sir. The book, while good, isn't an end-all to be-all. Good enough for me. Your job, then, is to sound battle stations for the next 48 hours. That's long? Yes, that long. We're expecting a flood of spaceships coming our way, and we can't let them into Grogian airspace. There was a scattering of feet as some of the sailors got out of the way for one who came rushing up to them. This new addition came to a stop and also gave a smart salute. Important message to be delivered, sir. Out with it. We have ships headed our way, tons of them. Drought turned to eye his XO, Smithers, with a raised eyebrow. Well, what do you have to say now? All hands to stations, battle stations. The enemy is invading in the form of pirates and other galactic creatures. We do not want this scum near us. He said this loudly enough so that cheers went through the sailors, who were close enough as the room became loud with the sounds of boots running every which way. An alarm began sounding, and 3 minutes of this had cleared the cafeteria of as many of them as it could, to Drought's satisfaction. He took a few leisurely steps, taking his time and enjoying the freedom of movement once again. We should hurry to the bridge, sir. There is no telling what these groups of ships might do. Oh, yes, you better hurry up then. You don't want to miss out on ordering people around. With a nod, Smithers ran off to do as ordered, leaving Drought to sigh and hope for the best. The flying squirrel, on the other hand, sat in a prime position, having reversed course a few times to avoid being spotted. This had left them not far from the border of Grogian space, and space. The main turret of the ship had trained and targeted the lone Grogian naval vessel in the area. To turret captain Mark V, it was an odd sight to see before them. Dozens of regular spaceships headed towards the area that was off limits. Worse, there was only one Grogian ship to stop this horde. It made no sense that this would be enough, but cruisers of that size did carry a lot of weapons. This is the captain to the main turret. Are we ready to unload? Tapping the button on his helmet ear, Mark was quick to give a response. We have them dead to rats and they don't see us. I will say it does feel weird though. Explain, Mark? Like it is a setup, one cruiser versus how many out there? The Grogian naval cruisers are some of the best in the world. A few rambling ships are easy prey. Prepare to fire on it. Aye, Captain, as long as my complaint is acknowledged. Noted. Prepare to fire in 10 seconds. Instinctively, Mark V's hand rose up into the air, as everything went still in the turret. First shots at the shield will need to be fast with the reloads. His crew nodded and waited for the hand to drop. Commence firing. With a frown and more than a little frustration, the hand of Mark dropped. It was followed by the echoes of booms that shattered space. The cloaking tech that had kept them hidden up to this point now faded away, and when the echo faded from the big 816mm 3 guns, they were quick to recoil and then moved back into place, allowing for the reload. The crews were already moving about to make sure that the new shells were going to be properly put in by the autoloader, and that nothing would go wrong firing the next salvo. Bridge, how were those shots? Silence greeted them as Mark looked down the viewfinder to get a perspective for himself. It wasn't hard to track the massive projectiles that were doing their best to fight their way through the vacuum of coldness that made up space. The cruiser seemed to have not noticed the objects incoming as it sped forward towards an interception path. 10 seconds passed as the shots drew closer and closer until splashdown. The first one reached and bounced off a protective outer shield that went up, but the next two slid past with a shot hitting the aft section, and the other the lower bow near the keel line. 2 quick explosions followed, and the vessel shuddered as it veered off course. Well targeted, guns down, we're going back into stealth mode. The order was relayed to the crew, who made quick work of standing the guns down and unloading them, while pulling the shells out of the gun. The work kept up as the guns were put into a stored safe position in the turret, left with only a skeleton crew for Mark V to command. As the impacts sliced their way through the ship, Drought grabbed at what he could. The command console on the bridge was about the only thing that was not moving at this moment. Red lights flashed before him as the computer complained about pretty much everything and shouted something was wrong. Something about a warning and something about this and that was wrong. He couldn't even hear at the moment with all that was going on, and his ears were ringing. When things began to settle, he already had a feeling that it was far too late for the ship.
What hit us?
Pirate cruiser, sir. They're disappearing now.
How the hell did they get one of those? Never mind. State of the ship.
Systems are going offline one by one, sir. She took 2 direct hits and we can't close off compartments to the breaches.
Give the orders to get out of there, then.
He himself found his legs carrying him towards an escape pod not far from the bridge. Though the second the order was given, sailors were going to be clamoring to claim space aboard them. No warning had yet been sent out, and he found his XO among the group that was trying to get out of there.
XO! Sir! Get out the order to abandon ship, that's your duty.
Smithers stood for a moment, trying to process what he might not escape if he followed orders, then slowly, with a salute, hurried to the station that had the emergency box by it. This was watched carefully by Drought, who quietly kept taking steps so that he could get off the bridge himself. There was already no need for any officer, including the captain, to go down with the ship. He wasn't about to be one of those in a long line of heroes when there was money to be made. Having made his way to one of the further escape pods, not too far off of the bridge, Drought was trying to settle in when he heard the rapping on the door. He had closed it because there was little need for anyone else to come in, and no one else really realized that there was an escape pod there. And plus, there had been other pods. Most of the bridge, if not the entirety, had probably already left. Who was it? And why this one when there was a couple of others that they could use? The military build of these pods meant there was no windows to see anything outside of the pod, or into the pod for that matter.
Sir, please let me in. I told the crew to abandon ship.
The sound of the XO's voice was not particularly welcoming at this point. Having already hit the ejection button twice, the pod had not responded. Now the boat was trembling and shaking even more. It was a distraction from getting the pod out of there.
Still, he felt a pang of regret
and went to the door.
This pod isn't working, Smithers. Go find another one. There are no other pods, sir. They're all gone. I think the bridge even separated from the rest of the boat. Please.
With a sigh, he hit the button to open the door, and a blast of cold, frozen space came in. He looked out, trying to see anything, but realized it was pitch blackness, and a sinking realization hit him that all was beyond him was space. Having done his day's work, not that there was much to do, Cordite walked to the hotel's pool patio area. It was one of the perks of working from this place for the embassy, a nice place to walk out to. There was a loud siren that blared out, though, and a flash of something, which made him look up. A box had formed in the sky and was blinking away, but didn't say anything yet. What is this nonsense? Words began spewing into the boxed-off space. War declared, Grogian Empire attacked. A wave of annoyance came over Cordite, as he knew a bunch of problems probably had just fallen into his lap. The message continued to talk of an attack on a cruiser within Grogian space, but provided no great details. Oh boy, this is going to go all too well. The communicator in his pocket began to vibrate, and he pulled it out to look at the screen. A list of officials from various governments all wanted to hear what he had to say. The problem was there was nothing to say at the moment, so he cleared the list by rejecting all calls. It would buy him at best a few seconds before the list filled up again. If you ask me, it was Ophelia who did this, wasn't it? With a grunt, Cordite looked towards his associate Francis, who had come outside. In a few feet the two were next to one another, both looking at the script box in the sky. What do you want to do, by the way? We need to tell these galactic folks something to keep them away for a little while." Having had that exact thought rolling around in his mind, Cordite nodded. He had an idea that would only buy them a little while. "Send out a press release stating that a pirate saw that free space was being limited by the Grogian Empire. In accordance with law, they acted to make sure that free space was enforced." Francis raised an eyebrow but shrugged as they both headed for the entranceway to get to work. End of Part 9, Book 1 of Pirates, Politics, and Potentially Treasure. Thank you for listening.